Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. So today is the official first seed starting day of the year for me. It's about mid-January now. Today is actually the 8th. But regardless, in January I like to start a lot of the herb seeds that are either cold tolerant or they take a while to really get going. So I'll just be starting several of those today, and then I also have a handful that need a cold stratification period. So I'll actually do these in a separate video so that I can go into a little more depth of the processes that you can do to cold stratify your seeds, or if it's even necessary in some cases. So with that out of the way, I'll go ahead and talk about the process that I'm starting these seeds with. So these are going to be done with a soil blocking method. I've explained this in the soil blocking guide video if you haven't seen that already. So if you'd like a little bit more detail about the process that I'm using, or if you want some extra tips to help you out with your seed starting process, check that out. So we'll get straight into this. Right here, I have my dirt, my soil blocker trays, some tape, and a pen to label with. And then this is just a potting mat so I don't get dirt all over the place. So with that being said, let me get this set up and rearrange my camera so that you can actually see what I'm doing, and I'll show you how I get these seeds started. Okay, so I've got things a little more organized just to show you what I've got going on. So I have pre-labeled all of these trays. You can see I can fit about 2 blocks here, 2 there. So that's how I have these labeled. Most of these I only need a couple of. And then like the summer savory, I'm probably going to do about 4 of these. So I'm just drawing an arrow. And then I have something similar going on here. You can do whole trays for yours or just a couple. But this is a really good way to conserve your space if you don't need a ton of plants. And then I'm going to do a whole tray of chamomile. So this will be 8 blocks. All right, now that I've explained that process a little bit, I'm going to put the soil blocks on the tray. Now, this start is already pre-moistened. Your soil blocks, they need to be wet or they're just going to fall apart. They're not going to compact. Now, something that I did not think of mentioning before, if you have a tray like this and you can see it's not going to quite fit the entire soil blocker on that other half, you could either take and move these blocks to that side and then put your block here, or you can just take and do it on another tray and then transfer those blocks on to fill in this gap. So that's what I'll be doing. I'll just transfer them on from another tray, but really doesn't matter either which way. So I've got the blocks on the tray now, and some of them are a little bit imperfect, but that's okay. Really, you're just needing a hunk of soil to put the seeds on, so you don't have to be a super perfectionist with it. But okay, so we've got the first tray of blocks done. There are 14 blocks here, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to sow the seeds on these. first up, we have thyme. You can see these seeds are very, very small. So I'm just going to surface sow these. Let's take, and this is my thyme section, these 2 blocks here. I'm just take and sprinkle those. Now these seeds are a little bit older, so I'm going to go a little bit heavy on them. They did just fine last year. Okay, so that is my 2 thyme plants, and I've only got 2 blocks here, but you've seen how many seeds I just sowed there. I could easily separate that out into more plants if I want to later. Now we're going to do rosemary. You can see these seeds are much larger, and for rosemary, you only need to do 1 per hole. So it's not as sprawling as thyme is. So you only need 1 stalk of your rosemary, but if you're not sure if your seed's going to germinate, you can put 2 or a few. I'm going to put 2 in each so that I can be sure that I have at least 1 pop up in each of my blocks here so I don't have to come back and re-sow them. And again, later, if more than 1 of those pop up in each, I could either separate them or I can just thin them out. Mugwort. Now this is actually an herb that requires cold stratification in the directions whenever most places that you see are growing it, but I found that it did not need any cold stratification whatsoever. The last time that I sowed this, nearly all of the seeds germinated that I had sown without any cold stratification period. Got an envelope within an envelope. Again, this is another one that the seeds are extremely small. So I'm just going to surface sow these. Next is St. John's wort. Another one that we're going to surface sow. My dog is dreaming here. Oh. So that was 6 of the St. John's wort. You can see my numbers are all mixed up here. The things like the chamomile and the St. John's wort, I'm doing more of those because I really like doing those in teas. And then next we have Spilanthes. Figure this will be a good one to dry and have on hand. We don't really deal with toothaches a lot, but when we do, I guess it'd be nice to have something on hand because we don't really keep Orajel or anything just because it's not a common thing that we have to deal with. But yeah, I mean, you never know. Okay, so these seeds are pretty small too, so I'll surface sow them. And once again, we can separate these later if we want. But if you are going to separate these, I recommend doing that, probably around the time that their true leaves start coming in, or once they get a little bit more established. Once their roots are really filled in, you don't want to go breaking them with a lot of them. I mean, most of them, they'll be fine, but ideally you'll want to do it so that you don't stress the plants out. Okay, so now that all of the seeds are sown for this, I'm going to set this tray to the side. And with these, what I'll do is just kind of go around and disturb the top of the dirt a little bit to try and get some of these seeds covered. These are going to be in a humidity dome, so most of them are going to be fine. They don't want to be heavily covered anyway. I think the rosemary were the largest seeds that we had in there, and both of those are like around the centers of these. And quite honestly, I don't even, in the past, I haven't needed to really do this too much. So you could rough up the surface to mix in the seeds, or you can come back with a very, very light dusting of dirt over the top. And also, I realize as I'm doing this that there's a good chance that I might be mixing up some of my seeds because some of them are so tiny. So that's something to think about. I'm not too worried about it because I'm not going to be selling any of these, and I can tell what most of them look like as they're coming up if I do need to separate them. But that's just something else to think about. Okay, now I'll set this to the side. Once I get done with all of these, I'll put them in their humidity chambers and then set them under their grow light. So we'll cover all that. For now, and for these next two trays, I'll go ahead and just put all of the blocks on them really quickly. Okay, so I'm back and I've got all of the blocks on these two trays ready to go now. I definitely had my soil mix just a little bit too wet the first round. I don't know if you can tell the difference here, but these are slightly more crumbly and these are much more squarish. So that's a tip if you want like a really good soil block, is to make sure that your soil is not too wet or too dry if you want the perfect square shape. Regardless though, it should be okay. Sometimes if you don't get it compacted correctly though, it will not hold its shape and it's just going to fall apart. You'll still have your plant, but it won't be in the shape of a block. Okay, so on to the seed sowing. First, we're going to do the chamomile seeds, and that's going to be this whole tray here. These are my seeds. They're very small. We will surface sow these. And for those of you who have not grown chamomile, When you home grow your chamomile, it is much more potent than what you'll get at the grocery store. So I'm really just getting into a lot of the herbs. I've got a handful out in my beds now, but this one was really one that surprised me because it's completely different than what you'll get when you normally buy it from your local store or wherever. Okay, so I actually only used about half of the seeds in my hand, if that. I'll just throw these back in their packet. Right, and now we'll move this tray to the side. And now our last tray. We'll start with valerian. This is my first time growing valerian. These seeds are a little bit larger than your chamomile, but we're still going to surface sow these. Just not quite as heavily. Next is Twine&Sage. This is a pink Sunday variety. Okay, so these are my sage seeds. They're a little bit larger, so I'm actually just going to put 2 in each of these blocks. But I'm going to put them on opposite sides somewhat, so that they do both sprout. I can separate them more easily. I'm just going to press these in as I'm going on these. Next is white sage. You can see the seeds are the same size, so I'll be doing the same thing. Pressing 2 seeds in each block on alternating sides. Well, I say that, but there's a little bit of like husk trash stuff in there, so I'm gonna just sprinkle these. And this is the white sage. Just going to give them a light press into the soil. Now moving on to broadleaf sage. This is currently the variety that I have outdoors now. I believe I have 4 plants, maybe more, but you can never have enough of it, and it's also really good for a pest deterrent, so you can interplant it with your other garden vegetables. You can see the seeds look much different on this. They almost resemble like a brassica seed. Same thing here. Plant my seeds in alternating corners of my block. And press them into the soil. And lastly, we have summer savory. So these last 6 blocks are going to be summer savory. Small seeds, so we're going to surface sow them. Now I'm sowing these kind of heavily because I've tried to grow summer savory in the past and the seeds didn't germinate. So this is a different pack of seeds, but I'm just going to sow them heavily anyway. And then disturb the dirt. And when you're putting your trays together and you have a mixed variety, it is best if you can put together varieties that are going to be germinating at the same time if you're going to be keeping them on the same tray for the time that you're going to be growing them. Because it is hard to say with a lot of these herbs because they'll give you a germination estimate of like anywhere between 7 to 21 days. So how are you supposed to know? It's fine. Just if that is something that you're not prepared for, whenever they start to germinate and sprout up out of the dirt, if you need to, just take the block and put it on a separate tray. Or I'm actually going to be covering these in a plastic wrap. So say you have this half of your tray that germinates before this half, you can just leave this half covered in your plastic wrap and it'll give you a little bit more leeway with your decisions. Okay, so speaking of, I'm going to grab my plastic wrap and get these ready. Okay, so I've got all of our herb seeds transferred over to the heating mat, and they're also loosely covered in a plastic wrap for the germination period. I'll check back on these about at least every other day to see if they need water. They will hold the moisture a lot better as long as they're covered, but still, I definitely recommend keeping an eye on it so that they don't dry out. And then as they start germinating and the seeds pop up, I'll put them under a grow light. Now, this could happen all around the same time or all at different times. So I'll try to keep you updated. Soil blocking really is a great way to start your seeds. I was able to get like 11 different varieties on those trays today. So it is definitely a space saver. Anyway, I hope you enjoy these videos and I'll be sure to keep you updated. Look out for the next one that I will be starting, which will likely be pepper seeds. So thank you so much for watching and bye.